Today, Pyongyang is one of the darkest cities on earth, silent, restricted, and feared. But 100 years ago, the same city was known as the Jerusalem of the East. It's almost impossible to imagine now, but this city, now ruled by one of the world's most repressive regime, was once the beating heart of one of the greatest Christian revival in history. This is the forgotten story of how Pyongyang became the spiritual capital of Asia, and how faith, persecution, and survival would forever change the destiny of a nation. When the first Protestant missionaries arrived in Korea in the late 1800s, the odds were completely against them. The country was closed off, suspicious of foreigners, and steeped in a century of tradition. But somehow the gospel spread like wildfire. By 1900s, Pyongyang wasn't just hearing about Christianity, it was living it. Almost 1 of 5 people in the city had converted. Churches filled with every corner, and faith wasn't just a religion, it was a social movement. Missionaries birthed schools, hospitals, and literacy. For the first time, ordinary Korean could read, learn, and lead. But the real genius wasn't what the missionary did, it was what they didn't do. They follow something called the Navius method, a simple but radical idea. Let the local lead. The Korean church would be self-supporting, self-governing, and self-propagating. That means pastors, not missionary, stood the pulpit. Faith wasn't imported, it was homegrown. By the early 1900s, Christianity wasn't just a foreign religion, it has become part of Korean identity, linked to education, modern thinking, and even national pride. In January 1907, about 1,500 men gathered at the Bible conference in Pyongyang. The meeting were routine prayers, sermon, hymns, until one night, everything changed. A local pastor named Kim Son-ju stood up in front of everyone. He confessed that he had cheated a friend. A quiet moment of honesty that set up something no one could have predicted. Suddenly, men and women across the room began confessing their own sins aloud. People wept, screamed, begged for forgiveness. The sound was so overwhelming that the witness said it felt like a thunderstorm of repentance. This wasn't a chaos, it was a revival. What historians now call the Pyongyang Revival or the Korean Pentecost. Out of it came a new culture of prayer. Loud, passionate, collective, early morning prayer gathering became a normal, and lives actually changed. People repaid debt, reconciled with enemies, and built communities. Then came Japan's annexation of Korea in 1910. Christians, now numbering in the hundreds of thousands, refused to bow at Shinto shrines, a direct act of defiance. Korean independence movement erupted in 1919. 13 of 33 signers of declaration were Christians. Faith had calmed rebellion. The cross was now a symbol of resistance. Christianity wasn't just saving souls, it was shaping the nation's destiny. But the history took a brutal turn. After World War II, the Korean peninsula was split in two. In the north, the Soviets installed Kim Il-sung. And to him, the Christian church wasn't just a religion, it was a threat. The regime outlawed worship, confiscated churches' property, and imprisoned pastors. The once thriving churches of Pyongyang were turned into propaganda holes. Tens of thousands of Christians were executed or sent to labor camps. The city once filled with prayer fell silent. Thousands of believers fled south, carrying nothing but their faith. They arrived in a broken war-torn South Korea, but they brought change everything. Those northern refugees become pastors, teachers, and leaders. The fire that had burned Pyongyang now spread through Seoul, and from the ashes, the South Korean churches was reborn. Fierce, prayerful, unstoppable. Today, South Korea sends more missionaries abroad than almost any other countries in the world. Meanwhile, in the north, faith went underground. Literally, believers met in the secret, whispering hymns in the dark, knowing a single word could mean execution. Even now, up to 70,000 Christians are imprisoned for their faith. The Kim regime replaced with its own cult of worship. The Bible was replaced with the words of the leaders. But flame didn't die. You can't kill what God ignited. The revival began in the Pyongyang in 1907. Changed more than one city. It changed a nation. In one day, when the wall of North Korea fell, when people can worship freely again, perhaps the first sound to rise from Pyongyang will be the same as it was a century ago. Chorus of voices crying out in prayer. The fire that left in the north still burns, waiting for the day it come home.